Why are there so many lesbians in women's sports? Look, I've got no skin in that game, but it's an interesting question because it's not just a stereotype. If you've ever watched women's basketball or soccer and thought, there seems to be a lot of lesbians out there, you're not imagining things. The numbers are striking, and we'll get into specifics. The elephant in the room? Is there something about lesbians that make them better at sports? Or is it instead cultural reasons at play? Hey, I'm Ken LaCourte. I love looking into uncomfortable questions, sex, race, culture, and give it to you as balanced and nuanced as I can. This isn't a video to get people to say, F yeah, but hopefully one to get us all just a little bit smarter. In this video, we'll first check out statistics to see how common being a lesbian is in both the general population and in some sports. We'll look at some physiological differences. In other words, nature. Are lesbians wired for sports? And we'll see some surprising answers there. And finally, we'll take a look at the nurture factors, the role of culture in society. Okay, so here are the statistics I found. In the United States and worldwide, about 1.5% to 2% of women self-identify as lesbians. It's lower among older women and higher among younger ones. It also gets a little muddier if you throw in bisexuality or other sexual identities, especially since a growing number of younger women especially, they consider themselves bisexual, but they don't actually have sex with women. And when we look at lesbians in some sports, the numbers can be up to 10 to 15 times higher than the general population. That's not a statistical anomaly. That's significant and a consistent trend. Roughly a third of WNBA players are openly lesbian, and there's some who undoubtedly keep their sexuality to themselves. At 15 times higher than the general population, it had the biggest differential that I could find in sports. But it's not just basketball. Women's soccer teams have a lot of gay players as well. At the Tokyo Olympics in 2021, women's soccer had more than 30 openly out lesbians and bisexuals on national teams around the world, more than any other sport. Team USA alone had 7 LGBT players in the gold medal match. The men's team, 0. At those Olympics, lesbians and bisexual women outnumbered gay men by a 7-to-1 ratio. Think about that for a minute. In theory, gay men should be just as visible. In reality, women's sports are blowing them away. In the 2023 Women's World Cup, 12% were publicly out as lesbian, and on Australia's team, that number was 40%. Basketball, soccer, softball, and rugby, they top the list, although the rest are more anecdotal than statistics driven. On the other hand, sports like gymnastics, figure skating, and diving, they're way lower, which I'll get into in a bit. And it's not just the United States. In Canada, Britain, Scandinavia, a lot of other countries, it's the same story. Lesbian and bisexual women dominate athlete counts. On the other hand, though, countries with more conservative sexual cultures, like Japan or Russia, they often report 0 out lesbians on national teams. Now, that's unclear whether that means they actually have fewer lesbians competing or whether they just don't like to talk about it. Even within the United States, geography plays a role as well. Colleges and teams in the South, especially religious ones, they tend to be more quiet about it. Brittany Griner said her Baylor coach told players not to talk about being gay because it might hurt recruiting. Compare that to Stanford, where 2 players were a couple during a Final Four run and nobody really cared. And the numbers have changed over the years as well. In 1997, the WNBA's inaugural season, not a single player was publicly out. 15 years ago, some coaches reportedly warned recruits about lesbian teams like they were contagious. As the current numbers show, though, the climate is quite different now. So let's look into the reasons, starting with biology and nature. Are lesbians wired for sports? The answer, kind of surprisingly, is maybe. Start with hormones, specifically testosterone. Lesbians, on average, have slightly higher natural testosterone levels than straight women. Not freakishly high, not transitioning high, just higher within the normal female range. And higher testosterone coordinates with things like muscle mass, explosiveness, aggression, and competitiveness, useful traits in every sport. Now, toss in another piece, birth control. A lot of young women take oral birth control, but lesbians, well, not so much for kind of obvious reason. And here's the twist. Hormonal birth control lowers natural free testosterone by as much as 60%. Some straight female athletes avoid it completely, but others are training and competing with suppressed testosterone levels compared to their lesbian teammates. Is that enough to make someone a better athlete? Well, sure. I mean, if you're competing at the edge of human performance, small advantages matter. If you've got a little more drive or power, that can be the difference between riding the bench or starting, or between amateur and pro. But the testosterone story goes back even further. Not just adult hormone levels, but what you marinated in as a fetus. Prenatal hormone exposure, especially androgens like testosterone, they play a big role in shaping bodies and brains. And there's a theory that higher levels of prenatal testosterone not only increase the odds that a girl grows up to be a lesbian, but also boost traits that help in sports. One of the weird markers that researchers use to estimate that prenatal exposure is called the 2D/4D ratio. It's the ratio of your index finger to your ring finger. Lower ratios are associated with higher prenatal testosterone, and across most studies, lesbians, especially the more butch ones, have significantly lower 2D to 4D ratios than straight women. Athletes, regardless of orientation, also tend to have lower ratios. So, if this sounds like a bit of a stretch, let's look at the physical traits. Studies show lesbians, on average, tend to have more masculine builds. Wider hands, longer limbs, broader shoulders. Now, I shouldn't have to say this, but judging from past viewer comments, I do. These are averages, not rules. There are plenty of tiny, feminine lesbians and plenty of broad-shouldered straight women, and if you know one, that doesn't negate reality, okay? And at a population level, these subtle differences add up. Then there's the brain. In some studies, lesbians score higher than straight women on things like spatial reasoning, mental rotation, and competitive drive. They also score a bit lower on conformity and emotional sensitivity. These mental traits align a bit more with males. It means, on average, they're more comfortable pushing boundaries, taking risks, and going hard. That's exactly the psychological makeup that thrives in competitive sports. Even stress response might be a factor. One study found that lesbian athletes perform better in high-pressure away games than their straight counterparts. But remember, biology isn't destiny by a long shot. These are averages, not blueprints, and everyone's different. Biological differences, especially small ones, they're only one factor going on. Hey, if I make any substantive mistake in this video, know that I'll fix it in a pinned comment below, and I also have my source notes in the description as well. And subscribe if you like stuff like this. Okay, so does all this mean lesbians are biologically wired for sports? No, but if you have a population that on average has more testosterone, stronger spatial reasoning, more aggression, and a build that favors athletes, it's no surprise that more of them wind up succeeding in competitive sports. But biology is only half the story. I mean, if it sets the stage, nurture, culture, and society, that takes it to the next level. And it's the environment, coaches, locker rooms, social signals, peer pressure that helps decide who sticks around long enough to succeed. It starts at childhood with what they call the tomboy pipeline. But a lot of lesbians will tell you they were tomboys growing up. They were less interested in dolls or dresses and more interested in physical activities, including sports. Now imagine a different kind of girl who cares about what boys think when she hits puberty, and she's more into makeup than sports. A lot of girls bail from sports right there, not because they're not good, but because their interests change. Another major nurture factor is team culture. And sports teams have often become welcoming places for lesbian athletes. That cultural openness creates a powerful feedback loop. More lesbians participate openly, creating environments that welcome even more women to join. That locker room becomes their tribe. Now, as I mentioned earlier, historically the opposite has been true, and a lot of women's teams weren't so accepting in the 80s and 90s. Lesbian was a slur sometimes coaches threw at other programs. Penn State's legendary coach, Renee Portland, literally banned lesbians from her program. Her policy was no drinking, no drugs, no lesbians. And that wasn't ancient history, that was in the early 2000s. And even stars weren't immune. Brittany Griner didn't come out publicly until after she turned pro, even though everyone on the team already knew. So what happens when you finally find a team where no one cares who you date? You just might stay and commit and play harder. That's nature at work. But it's not all rainbows and inclusion. In many ways, that script may have been flipped. It used to be gay players who felt isolated. Now some straight women feel like they don't fit in. Candace Wiggins played 8 seasons in the WNBA and later said that she was bullied and harassed during her career for being straight. Now, other straight players said they didn't experience things like that, but it's hard to argue that Wiggins' discomfort wasn't real to her. Caitlin Clark, the most popular female basketball player in the world, got targeted with a lot of hate and left off the women's Olympics team. Why? Well, here's Bill Maher's take.
Yeah. Women are catty. The league is very lesbian. And she's not. And there's race. There's a lot of going on here.
All of that plays into the biggest social differentiator effect, retention. Straight girls drop out of sports at higher rates than lesbian or bi girls do. The reasons are somewhat predictable. Feeling out of place, different social needs, wanting to feel more traditionally feminine. Meanwhile, lesbian athletes are more likely to stay in sports into adulthood for all the reasons we talked about. As teams become friend groups, that often becomes dating and couples. Suddenly leaving sports doesn't mean missing games. It means leaving your social life, your partner, your identity. That's less so for straight women. So it's not because they're recruiting lesbians. It's because once the environment is safe and comfortable, people stay and more show up. Meanwhile, look at the sports where almost no women are publicly lesbian, like gymnastics or figure skating. They're more feminine sports where smiling, posing, and aesthetic beauty matter more, and the culture is different. So look, sports don't turn women gay, but they do keep more lesbians in the game for many sports, and they do subtly push out others. That's the power of nature. So, why are there so many lesbians in sports? Because it's one of the few places where biology, culture, and community all line up. They have some inherent physical advantages and cultural ones as well. In almost all topics where genetics and culture are a factor, there's rarely a clear-cut answer, but intertwining feedback loops. It was certainly the case in my next video, where I researched and answered the question, why do men love boobs so much? I originally thought it was all about socialization, but it's not. And surprisingly, there's a lot of serious research on that topic. Hey, thanks for sticking around. I hope you got a little bit smarter and come back again. Take care.